let's face it, whenever we implement change, we face resistance. So let's look at how to handle the 5 commonest forms of resistance to make our change implementation a success. This video is sponsored by the digital adoption platform WalkMe. People will resist change. That's a given. Unless, of course, you're proposing to double their salaries and halve their hours with no strings attached. In which case, you'll probably face skepticism at best and cynicism at worst. But back in the real world, well, real world change is complex, and people will deal with it in lots of different ways. But one thing you can be sure of is they will resist. So let's look at some of the commonest ways that people resist change and how to deal with them effectively. The first form of resistance is when people say something like, "I don't understand why we need to change. We get on with our working lives and we really just don't notice the things that don't impinge on us. But the leaders in our organizations, they need to be aware of all sorts of different things. And so it is not surprising that they spot a need for change before we do. If it ain't broke, don't fix it," is a perfectly reasonable response. But what if it is broke and you just don't know it? This first level of resistance demands that we spend time explaining and demonstrating the need for change. We need to talk about the relevant threats, drivers, trends, and opportunities. But once people understand that there is a need for change, you get a second and more challenging form of resistance. It gets tougher. The second level of resistance is when people say something like this: "I don't understand why this change." Okay, so they get it. They understand why you need to change, but why has your organization chosen this route? It doesn't make sense to them. And the fact is that there are usually a lot of trade-offs, and the best response, assuming your organization has chosen it, the best response is not always the obvious one, particularly as people in individual departments will see the world through a particular perspective, through a particular lens. But the fact is that unless you can give a good meaty because in response to their perfectly reasonable why, then there will always be resistance. You need to explain why the organization has chosen the path that it has chosen. And you need to be prepared to accept that this might be a compromise. There may be disadvantages to this choice, but overall, it's the right one. But be aware that there may be 2 subtly different forms of this level of resistance. The first is the obvious one. "I don't understand why we've chosen this," means that they just don't understand, and you need to explain it. But secondly, they may be saying, "I do understand it, and it doesn't make sense." And there, what's going on is that they have misunderstood it. They've understood it in a way you didn't intend. You have to figure out what is the source of that misunderstanding and put them right. And of course, you do need to be scrupulously honest with people. This may be the best solution, but it may not be the best for them. Which leads us to our next level of resistance. And it gets tougher. The third level of resistance is when people say something like this: "I don't like this change." This may not be the toughest challenge you'll face, but it is often the most important one. And there are 2 very different reasons why people might say, "I don't like this change." And the first is the obvious one. They say, "I don't like this change," because they've looked at the change and they don't think it's going to be good for them. And the reality is sometimes they're going to be right. Because organizations have to balance the needs of a wide range of different stakeholders. They have to make compromises. There are probably no remaining obvious changes that will benefit everyone left to make. Consequently, there are going to be losers. Figure out whether the person who's expressing this form of resistance is right, whether the change is going to be bad for them, or whether you just need to show them how it will be to their benefit. But do not lie. If the change is bad for them, own up to that and provide all the support that you can. Muster all the resources the organisation is prepared to commit to supporting them through the difficult decisions that will flow from having to go through a change which is not to their advantage. But the second reason people might say, I don't like this change, is that they've looked at the change you're trying to make, and they've looked at the way you're trying to make it, and they care passionately about their organisation. And they can see that you're about to make a mistake. Now, they may be right about that, or they may be wrong about that, but they have the organisation's best interests at heart. And as a change leader, your responsibility is to listen to their concerns and to evaluate them objectively. They may be trying to save you from a grievous error. Take them seriously. This is important, but it gets tougher. The fourth level of resistance is when people say something like this: I don't like change. And the reality is, nobody likes change. Although it's equally true that we all live through masses of change. The difference, of course, is that each of us has our own threshold for change. Push anyone far enough, make big enough changes for anyone, and we will start to feel uncomfortable. Some people have a very low threshold for change and they will push back against it very early on. Others will embrace loads and loads of change, but even for them, there will come a point where they feel uncomfortable. And they say, I don't like change. In response to this level of resistance, there's two crucial things that you need to do. The first is to give them support and confidence that they've been through plenty of change before, they will go through this change and they will survive and they will thrive. You need to make them feel secure in going through the change. But secondly, you also need to prepare them for the changes that are to come. And often this involves training and personal development, giving them the skills and the knowledge they need to thrive and be confident in the new environment. Now, it used to be that training was pretty much the only way to give people new skills, short of giving them a manual and telling them to go away and read it, which never ever works. A good training event can give people the skills and the knowledge they need, and they can leave the event feeling confident that they know how to handle things. But of course, the reality is that they get back to the workplace and that confidence and that knowledge starts to evaporate. The other problem with traditional training events is they are very resource intensive. We tend to think about the cost of training as about the cost of hiring the room and building the training course and hiring the trainer, but actually the true cost of it is the lost productivity while all of your team are in training events. And of course, this is particularly the case with software implementations where there's a whole load of information to give. And this has many problems. Not least, it's daunting to have all of this information and to feel that you have to retain it all. Then, of course, there's the resource implication and the consequent cost. And finally, there's that memory thing. The information will fade, people will lose confidence, their morale will take a dip, and productivity will fall, despite the fact you've implemented a fantastic new piece of software, which the vendors have promised you will increase productivity. This has been a problem for many years. A better approach is to embed the training in users' day-to-day workflow. This way, you can teach users how to get the best from their software as they use it. The tools that do this are called digital adoption platforms. These act like an ever-present coach as the user works with their new or changed software. And this is where WalkMe steps in. WalkMe offers a leading digital adoption platform that does away with the need for training and extensive on-the-job support. Instead, it sits alongside every single user all the time, patiently prompting and guiding them through every interaction with the new or updated software. And it does it for as long as they need it or want it. WalkMe makes adoption of new software easy for users, giving them the confidence to work with the new software from day one and the satisfaction of knowing that they can do their jobs as well as before and maybe faster and more accurately. And the project team sheds the need to plan and schedule training. For the project, allocating a team to tailor the WalkMe interface to your organization's processes is far less to manage. And your sponsor gets to spend less money while reducing the levels of risk. And better still, when you or your software supplier introduce new features or update the user interface, your team can configure WalkMe to support users through the changes. And now, back to our story. It gets tougher. The fifth level of resistance is when people say something like this: "I don't like you." The rotten core of a resistance has nothing to do with the project itself. It's all about history. It's all about relationships. It's all about perceptions from the past. But you know what? When change happens, people resist. And if I've got a grudge, I've got an axe to grind, then as soon as I detect that there is change in the air, it's a perfect time to resist and make a pain myself. What better time is there for some people to air their frustrations? "I don't like you" is rarely personal, although it can be. You may be in the firing line, but it probably isn't you that they don't like. It's some aspect of the organization or their job or something that happened in the past. And now they're using the change as an excuse. There are only two options. Firstly, the employee may have a legitimate grievance. Something may have happened in the past that was never properly resolved. In which case, refer this to the appropriate manager, get them to sort it out. Hopefully, the misbehavior will stop. The other option, of course, is that there is no legitimate grievance and that what you're encountering is just bad behavior. And of course, every organization in every jurisdiction will have its own rules for handling inappropriate behavior at work. At some point, you need to be confident to trigger those processes. It is entirely legitimate to resist change. But when you're resisting just for the sake of resisting, then that is bad behavior. And it is appropriate for the management team to escalate this and make sure it stops. Implementing change is difficult, but as I said in an earlier video, it is very much a part of our jobs. It is part of a spectrum from hard project management to soft change management. Even if on many large projects you will have specialist change managers involved in the project. However, it is important for us to understand how to implement change on our projects. And the thing most project managers fear above all when change happens is resistance. But remember, resistance is good because it means that people are properly engaging with the change, the fact that it's going to happen, and an understanding of what the implications are likely to be. So your job is to follow the golden rule of resistance. Respect your resistors. Engage with them positively and respectfully. Deploy the tools you have at hand and check constantly to validate that the resistance you think you're encountering is actually the resistance that is there. For more on handling resistance, do check out my Handling Resistance Pocketbook or my book on stakeholder engagement, The Influence Agenda. I'll put links in the description below. And if you're implementing new or upgraded enterprise software, take a look at how WalkMe can help you save money, boost productivity, reduce errors, and improve employee experience. Please do give this video a like if you've enjoyed it or learned from it. I'll be making loads more great project management videos for you, so please do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of them. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.